good to have you with us in the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. One more time, viewers, we're going to talk about the whole controversy revolving our social media, especially Facebook, and the controversy around the alleged bias that Facebook really practices. Now, this all started with a report in WSG in the Wall Street Journal that said Facebook India was biased against its rulings for those who are linked to the BJP or to the government. You know, it cited certain examples of alleged inaction when it came to politicians of the BJP or pages linked to the BJP, and that's now exploded into a big controversy. The Congress party now, which was actually earlier in the dock over the entire Cambridge Analytica controversy, has now written to the Facebook CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, and the Congress party is seeking a high-level inquiry into the top leadership of Facebook India. They're saying that we need to have a report within 2 months. You need to show us all the hate speech posts that have been put across and pulled down since March 2014. And you need to replace the Facebook India's leadership here so that there is a impartial investigation, that they're not able to really impact in any sense in terms of the action they have been taken. Now, viewers, why is this happening? The basic point here is lack of transparency. What policies do these social media giants follow? When Twitter blocks or unblocks a certain handle, when they push or suppress a certain kind of content, when Facebook pushes or suppresses certain kind of content, when Facebook pulls down a certain post or blocks a certain page or a user account, are they really consistent with their policies? Or is there some kind of bias? The problem is that we don't know that because there is a lack of transparency in the way these things are done. Now, how do we improve it? Should we really be improving it? Is it the job of the government or anybody else to go after Facebook and ask them these questions? If it's a problem about hate speech, why doesn't the government and the law and order machinery of a country simply ensure that those people who are giving such hate speeches or putting up such hateful comments are actually punished for that? Is it really the responsibility of Facebook to pull down a hateful speech? Now, let me also bring out another point. At the end of the day, the social media giants are there to also make money. And so they will look at content that works. For example, there is an exemption policy that Facebook has. It's called the newsworthiness exemption policy. This is very interesting. Now, while they usually pull down posts or comments that are against their own policies and standards, here is the exemption. Political speeches are allowed even if they violate community standards. Political speeches are allowed, says the Facebook, because they are in the public interest. People want to know, people want to hear. So unless and until it's a speech that is literally directly going to incite violence, there is no problem. Only then will it be flagged off. Speeches by politicians, we are given to understand, are not even fact-checked for most of it. They're just put out there. Now, this is part of Facebook's policy. It's right there. But how many of us really know this? Because maybe we haven't read about it. How do we make the action by social media giants more transparent? With these kind of lax rules, isn't it obvious that they are going to be biased towards one party or the other, whoever is in power, whoever controls the power? Who should really take the responsibility for this content? Should it be the law and order agencies? Should it be the social media giants or the government? Do we really want the government regulating these? Some of these are the questions I'm going to be asking this evening. Let's say good evening to the panelists with me right now. Dr. Naval Kishore, spokesperson of the RJD, Sudesh Verma of the BJP, Radhika Kera, national spokesperson of the Congress Party, Srinivas Kodali, independent researcher, and Venkat Anand, senior assistant editor of the Economic Times. Venkat, let me start with you. You very closely track these companies, Venkat. Help our viewers understand that some amount of lobbying, some amount of work for their own business interests to cater to advertisers, to cater to political parties, perhaps is not something new.
So it's absolutely not new. I mean, it's something that has been happening over a period of time, and it's not a phenomenon that's exclusive to India either. I mean, so Facebook, if I have to add, has one of the largest sort of public policy teams in the US. But specific to India, I think obviously, as our story has revealed today, they have been, and it is something that I personally feel was also important for for people to understand as to how the weeds and the bare bones of the technology, how these companies basically lobby and quote unquote influence policy. So that is one of the reasons why we brought out the story today. It was extremely newsworthy, as Facebook would say. But at the same time, I think this has been actually going on for a while. So uh, obviously there is the profit element here, and it is something that nobody can run away from. And it is also a function of how polarized the sort of the world is today, in terms of ideologies, or in terms of preferences, that these platforms actually benefit from a content that actually cater to A or B ideology. So I would say it is something that we may have to live with, and it's something that I believe that there needs to be a greater accountability on the part of these giants, of these companies. I mean, they all say that they've been doing a lot. Occasionally, they'll be flaunting their whole AI. I mean, the algorithm, which is basically able to detect up to 95% of hate speech or problematic content even before it goes viral. But obviously, it's not 100%, and I think it needs to do much more. So yeah, I think they do have an onus. I mean, especially given the role that they are playing in
Okay.
democracy today, globally.
Yes, yes. The concern here is, and why do we care so much about what Facebook's policies are or what kind of content they're carrying, viewers? We care simply because, especially in a country like India, they have a large role to play in terms of putting the information out there, shaping people's viewpoints, pushing a specific kind of narrative. Facebook and its sister company, WhatsApp, are largely the methods via which people are consuming even news. Any kind of content, from what politicians are saying to what the news reports say to what any research allegedly says, everything is being consumed via Facebook and WhatsApp, which is why it becomes very, very important to know if they are actually in cahoots with a certain kind of side, ideology, party at any given point, or if they're intentionally suppressing one aspect, one kind of information, or not acting against the fake news. That's what becomes important. Radhika Khera, but can Facebook really be expected to look into this and do anything about it? I mean, your letter really, Congress Party's letter, really surprises me, because it's not to say that this is the first controversy. Mark Zuckerberg has been answering questions about Facebook's involvement from US to Brexit to every single big event in this world. So who will make them accountable? That's the big question. Mr. Sudesh Sharma, let's begin with you.
We believe that social media has come as a liberator from the so-called clutches of left liberal media that used to peddle certain narratives based on all kinds of stories. But social media is something that catches people if they go on the wrong foot. And you see the kind of tweets, the kind of things that come up in WhatsApp and all that. They are forcing the media to come closer to that narrative. You see, whether Rohingya Muslim is a threat to the country or not, people have a right to express. And if you consider there is a hate speech, there's a large section of people, they would not consider it a hate speech. So who is going to define hate speech is the primary issue. If you ask the government to define, then probably you are walking on the wrong path, because then we will say that, okay, why certain kind of newspapers are publishing news which we consider would be spreading hate. Like Sonia Gandhi's address, where she said that our par ki ladai, and asked people to take revenge and all that, that was streamed live on Facebook. That should be the first thing that should be called a hate story. That should be taken off. You see, if you start asking the government to monitor any such thing, then why only Facebook? Why not other media? So please don't walk on that. You see, it's the narrative of the loser. Congress narrative is the narrative of the loser because they have been failing to use social media to the advantage of political campaign. And that is their problem. 2019, prior to the election results came, you can watch the interview of Mr. Rahul Gandhi. He was dead sure of his victory because they had employed Cambridge Analytica. They had done everything using Facebook data to mold the opinion of people. But they could not do so because people see through everything. And that is their problem. They're trying to still find alibis for their defeat. And that is why this attack. If you give me time later, I'll explain why congressmen are actually gaining from Facebook liberal view towards left, liberal and Islamists. And the BJP's posts have been, or our sympathizers' posts have been taken off by the Facebook without rhyme or reason. And there is no platform for appeal. But we still, live in that atmosphere. We never said that ban Facebook, have a monitoring committee, take out all the, these are all narrative of a loser.
But Mr. Sudesh Sharma, your party and your government was the one who was willing to summon Mark Zuckerberg a year and a half ago when the Cambridge Analytica controversy broke out.
You see, in the case
now
of
you're saying you
Cambridge
don't care about what Facebook does.
In the case of Cambridge Analytica, you know that an employee, Christopher, came out, deposed in British Parliament in March 2018, where he said that Congress employed Cambridge Analytica in its campaign to use the Facebook data. He has, actually opened everything. The Pandora box is open. So Congress tried to manipulate the data. You tried to influence the elections. And you see, in the heat of movement, it happens because Congress should be very clear what they're using. They're using the data to manipulate. But you ask that the BJP is trying to control Facebook is something which is a laughing stock in this country. How can this happen? I'm really surprised. I don't see any reason. Just because some newspaper, which is known to be India better, particularly of this government, writes an article based upon one statement from someone who is close associated with the rival of the BJP in West Bengal Trinamool Congress, and then you start a narrative based on that. If that becomes an issue, then tomorrow a newspaper based abroad will publish any news, and you will start undermining all democratic institutions in this country. You don't believe yourself. Lack of confidence. Why don't you trust your own institutions?
Okay, let me bring in Naval Kishore on this. Naval Kishore, is very important for us to understand just where things stand. And how do we make this more transparent? Election after election, the role of social media giants becomes even more important. There is another election coming up. Is this a cause of concern if there are allegations that Facebook is biased towards one party?
Yes, surely it is a concern, and it is a great concern. In fact, if social media has created a different kind of world where the person is directly connected, he is participating, he is commenting, he is posting. So his role as making a public opinion becomes very important. BJP will not understand what we are trying to suggest is one thing that they don't recognize their hate speaker. In fact, they give they don't recognize that a hate speech is a hate speech. Hate speech is a hate speech. We have just had an experience in this year itself. So that is a different thing. What I will suggest that the first responsibility is the company like Facebook should recognize that if it is a hate speech, there has to be a policy, surely. And that policy must be equally applicable to everyone, whether it is a government or opposition. They should not take anybody as a ruling party or opposition. They should take as a user, and the user has to be dealt with objectivity. If it is not objective, if it is a hate speech, it must be stopped because it is going down to everyone. The Facebook users are from the village to the big cities. So there is a large number of differences. So it has to be controlled in the sense with a policy that it should not manipulate opinion. The BJP is known for manipulating opinion. You must have seen
in
2014.
But Mr. Naval Kishore, who is going to control it? You can't say the government will control it because that's your problem, that the BJP might end up controlling it.
No. The first thing is Facebook itself. Otherwise, we will not have faith in Facebook or Twitter or any social medium, which which has been accepted by people in a very generous way. Very huge number of people are using Facebook today and Twitter today and other social platforms, social media platform. The credibility depends on their objectivity, and the first onus lies on them. The government is responsible for not recognizing the fact that they are part of hate speech. They have to control their own people. They don't. You must have seen the Delhi election time itself. They did not recognize that देश के गद्दारों को गोली मारो dash dash dash. They did not recognize it as a crime. He was not given a so cause also. So that speaks a lot about the people who are in party, who are in ruling party. So it is not only responsibility of the Facebook, it is also responsibility of the public organization like political party to control the hate speech in the party. BJP, on the other hand, is very comfortable with hate speech because they think that they can manipulate opinion, and they have been doing so, right? And since the coming election after 2014, that is a very dangerous trend that has.
But Mr. Sudesh Sharma is saying that it's not hate speech. But Mr. Sudesh Sharma is saying, Naval Kishorji, that it's not hate speech. You think it's hate speech. They don't consider that hate speech. Mr. Sudesh Sharma, who is going to define hate speech?
Should Rohingyas be sent outside or not? Should Rohingyas be allowed to settle in India, or they should be sent back? I'm saying they should be sent back, lock, stock and barrel. Tell me, is it hate speech? Is it hate speech, Mr. Nawal? Tell me that. Why for security reasons say that Rohingyas should be sent back, lock, stock and barrel? Do you consider it hate speech? Tell me that.
That is culture of BJP. You have seen that.
You see, such insinuations won't work. You have to come with examples.
Okay. Let me bring in Radhika Khera. Radhika Khera, unfortunately, is on the phone line with us this evening for a bit. For now, we are hoping to get her live soon. But Radhika Khera, what is it the Congress expects the Facebook to do about it? The Facebook is going to have their own commercial interests. They will align with whatever they think needs to be aligned. They're not going to sit and explain to the Congress party what their policies to take down posts are and how they implement those.
See, we've seen that what the Facebook has been up to, whether it has been in USA, in the case of Brazil, in the case of United Kingdom, and the government has to take a stand. If they are not spreading hatred, if they are not doing anything wrong, what is stopping them from constituting a JPC? So we have to analyze this. What is the commercial deal that Anki Das was talking about? Why are they not taking out the post? Why is there selective? Why is the Facebook being selective when it comes to taking out posts? Why are they promoting hatred? They have to be responsible. A company like Facebook has to be responsible. And more than that, if the Indian government, if Modi government is actually not spreading hatred and they have nothing to hide, why are they not constituting a GPC and getting an inquiry into this? We've seen how they've gone ahead and banned so many apps that were detrimental for the Indian security. But this is something which is worse than that, because you're spreading so much of hatred, and we've seen what has happened, from mob lynching to episodes when we saw what Mr. Kapil Mishra did at that time during the Delhi riots. We've seen what happened after T. Raja's post. So the government also has to take a stand and get these people accountable if they are not the ones who are involved with them.
Radhika Khera, I will ask the BJP to respond in just a bit to you, but explain to me, how do you expect Facebook to act against Kapil Mishra's post when the police itself hasn't done anything about it? How do you expect the government to ask Facebook to act when in real the law and order machinery hasn't done anything about it?
We actually don't expect Facebook to act, because it's very clear by Anki Das' note that because of the commercial deal, because of whatever the deals that they have, they are not going to do anything about it. They want to be in the good books of the party which is in power. And we've seen now it is on the onus of the government. They have to take action against their own people who are spreading hatred. They have to control their people from spreading hatred. We've seen that the attitude of the BJP when it comes to their leaders, whether it was Pragya Thakur who spoke so badly about the father of the nation, whether it is Kapil Mishra, whether it is T. Raja. So this needs to be sorted out at the level of the BJP itself. And the problem is that, they are trying to divert for everything, because they have failed in providing jobs. They have failed when it came to the 15.
Okay, let me get Sudesh Sharma to respond to this, and then I go across to Srinivas Kodali. Yes.
Very interesting. As you rightly pointed out, Tanvi, if I can take sense of what you said, the government, I mean the constitution, the legal mechanism has enough provisions to take care of any such hate speech that incites violence of any kind. And the government is aware of that. We don't indulge in politics of hate. You see what the Congress is asking from Facebook. Facebook has already done a lot for the Congress. Do you know that the former Information Broadcasting Minister, Mr. Manish Tiwari, became senior fellow with Atlantic Council that is looking after the Facebook's, Atlantic Council was appointed in 2018 by Facebook to look after all these speeches, to figure out how things were going in the country. And Manish Tiwari in 2017 was appointed in South Asia wing. Imagine what is the quid pro quo the Congress should be explaining. And I can have, for your benefit and benefit of your viewers, I have brought a lot of things for you, the individuals you're talking about. You see, Anki Das, he spoke about, senior executive. Her family is aligned to Trinamool Congress. No link to the BJP. Manish Kanduri, who was the former head of news partnership at Facebook, joined the Congress and contested Lok Sabha ticket, lost. Siddharth Majumdar, who worked in Facebook's public relation, domain, and he worked as a strategist for Sonia Gandhi ji and Ahmad Patel ji. Imagine, Ajit Mohan, MD of Facebook, what was he? He used to work with Planning Commission during the time of UPA. So the Facebook has already obliged the Congress with many, many things that Congress would expect. And Cambridge Analytica happened, and in alliance by stealing the data of Facebook, that is why Cambridge Analytica issue came, and we raised the issue that they manipulated the data, taking data from the Facebook. So was it a legal thing to do? And Congress employed that. He was very sure that they were going to win, but they lost. Because by social media, you cannot win elections. This is the reality which 2019 elections have thrown. And the BJP, yes, we are into IT and we have experts and our entire, the ecosystem that supports us, they are well versed in IT. So you have to fight them at the level of knowledge, at the level of experience, at the level of using the social media, rather than asking the Facebook, do this, because Wall Street Journal has written something about it. And if Wall Street Journal becomes your norm, then tomorrow any paper writes anything about India, you demand a JPC. It's not a banana republic that you want a JPC just on drop of a hat. This is not a JPC committee country. You must be serious about politics.
Okay, I will come back to this. I will come back to the JPC point in just a bit. I just want to tell our viewers that as in April 2019, in the run-up to the general elections in our country, Facebook did take down hundreds of BJP-related accounts from Facebook and Instagram. The pro-BJP page, the Indian Eye, which had a huge following, was one of those pages that was taken down. It had about 2.6 million followers at that point of time. Verified right-leaning pages like My Nation were taken down. There's also been actions about pages that have been linked to the Congress party. A massive crackdown again in the month of April in the run-up to the election on pages linked to the Congress IT cell. 687 such pages were removed from Facebook, removed for inauthentic behavior and pushing spam. But the fact of the matter also is that the company itself keeps changing its policies and repeatedly runs into controversy about its alleged bias or alleged action towards one side or the other. And Srinivas Kodali, that this is a larger global problem. As we speak, the fresh round of controversy is even happening in US about Facebook being favoring certain conservative accounts, conservative pages, even portals that are putting out information that would ideally not cut through the rules of Facebook. This is a larger worldwide problem. Have we actually found out what could be the solution?
Frankly, there is no one definite solution, right? Like you can't let Facebook censor speech and you can't let government censor the speech alone, right? Like at the terms of volume of people who are using Facebook, it's 2 billion people across the world, right? Like no government, not even the US or not even the Indian government can regulate this. So when you're talking about regulating speech, we're very limitedly looking at hate speech. And in India, the institutions which are regulating hate speech during the elections is the election commissions. And if you're not during an elections, it's ideally the courts and the police. So in this case, like you brought up the issue of Mr. Kapil Mishra, if I'm not wrong, where there is an active case or there is an active investigation by the Delhi police and the Delhi police is not looking into it. But when you're looking at Facebook, the problem essentially comes as this. Facebook wants to be treated as a platform, as an intermediary, and doesn't want to be treated as a publisher. For example, Mirror Now would be a publisher, and if Mirror Now publishes any hateful content, it would be regulated by the Indian broadcasting authorities. But that's not something that's happening with Facebook, right? Like, because you're not treating Facebook as a publisher and because you're treating as a platform. But it so happens that Facebook is not a neutral platform, and because the people who are running it are only looking for profit or could have different political views. I'm not saying that they could be politically right or politically left, but they're definitely political. So those decisions these individuals are making are definitely political, and that's one reason why you can't let Facebook to be the arbitrator of speech. But what you can ask Facebook to do is be neutral, right? Like, unless you get a court order from the police, that you can't do any action on it. That's something that you expect of a platform. So the only way to look through this is to actually strengthen infrastructure, the capacity within our institutions, whether it's the election commission, whether it's the police or the courts, right? So a joint parliamentary committee which is looking at this problem would make sense, because it's parliament's job to make laws. Right now, our laws do not look at Facebook as a publisher, as an entity which needs to be regulated at scale, and that's something that Ministry of Electronics and IT is trying to do with those intermediary rules and guidelines. But I think we're at a point where we actually need a law to look at this at scale, because simple rules and guidelines by XK2 may not be enough.
Yeah, because you know what happened the last time when this controversy broke out. We said we want more transparency. We want Facebook or Twitter or any of these social media companies to be more clear about the action they are taking, and they've started now putting out that information. We know when how many of what kind of pages they take down, how long it takes for them to do so, or action or inaction. But now, Srinivas, according to one of these reports, it turns out that they're selectively even putting that information out. I mean, beyond that, what kind of transparency can we expect from Facebook? Or should we just simply go around telling everybody in the country that, this is possible, so don't really believe everything that you see or hear?
So if you look at policing the internet, right, like, I'm not very limiting it specific to Facebook, but Facebook by large is the internet for a lot of Indians, right? They use WhatsApp, Facebook, and some of the associated content.
Yeah.
Now, if you're talking about policing the internet, one of the successive laws that was effectively used in the US was the copyright notices that the US used to send. Like, if there is any copyrighted material that's available on online platform, you can send this DMCA copyright notice, and that content is immediately blocked by the essential platform, whether it's Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, any of these entities. And until a decision is arrived upon, whether it's by the courts or the legal authorities, because it's under dispute, that goes away, right? Because of the copyright laws. I think there is a requirement to regulate some of these issues. If there is indeed a issue where you file a police complaint and the authority in question is actually requesting these platforms to stop the publication of such content, I think it needs to be stopped. But the issue is actually the virality of these platforms, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or any of these entities. It's essentially how news is able to be virally spread. It's not the case with TV or rather newspapers, right? And even in case of TV, there is an editorial policy, and you're abiding by the existing regulations of the country. We don't have such a requirement for these online platforms, and the only way to, if you are trying to bring some of these regulations across, the parliament must discuss. I mean, in fact, I would say that the parliament has been discussing this forever, since net neutrality, since Cambridge Analytica. I would actually say that the Parliamentary Committee on IT should publish those reports and the submissions all these online platforms have submitted to the government, including the Justice Sri Krishna Committee, where Facebook or any of these online platforms have submitted on how they want to be regulated. None of these submissions that were made to the government, including the Election Commission, are public. In fact, when you file RTIs with the Election Commissions or any of these authorities, most of this information is classified as something that can't be shared by the authorities, that they are having discussion with a third party. This is something I think we should stop asking transparency
Okay.
from Facebook and ask transparency from our own government institutions, whether it's the Election Commission, MIT, even the Parliament.
Okay, interesting point. Fair enough. Venkat, do you want to add to this as what could be the possible solution?
I think Srinivas makes some interesting points there. I would just want to join in and say that what Facebook needs to do, and this is something just I take a cue from what they did in the US, where they where they came up with the independent civil rights audit for for the country, and I think they should do that for India, which is their largest market in terms of user base. So I mean, that would be something that I think it's absolutely mandatory. Given the sort of the volume of content that's generated out of here, and also the fact that India is actually one of the is one of the few countries where political content is created and consumed at scale. I mean, obviously the US comes close, but India is India. I would imagine. I mean, due to the sheer sort of user base, I mean, would have I guess a substantially more number of content. So that is something that they need to do for sure. And the other thing is just be honest. I mean, just every time there is something that that happens, you don't need to swarm into a lot of things in and around their existing system. And obviously, just do more. I mean, I guess people are also getting sick of this whole approach that they're taking in terms of their ability to do more. I guess they should enforce the community standards. And obviously, if enforcement can happen in the US, it should also be able to happen in this country. Or any other country for that matter. So that would be something that I think is worth looking at. Also, as a complementary point to what Srinivas was saying, I mean, the EU already has a code of conduct. I mean, which basically it's around hate speech, and it sort of I guess it forces these platforms to take off content within 24 hours of being reported. So that's something that I'm assuming is a good solution. But as he said, I mean, how do you do this at scale? And also, I guess Australia also looking at a similar sort of law, and they have apparently passed a law which basically also it governs, I guess, a speech around violence of I think high proportion.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I agree with you that I think
Yeah, but
that
what
Facebook needs
happens?
to do a little bit more.
I agree with you. Yeah, but the point is that they do have a lot of policies. I mean, if one had to really read through all that Facebook has put in place, for monitoring, scrutinizing as an entire cohesive system, where if the company actually operates on a strike basis, this is for our viewers to understand. If
Yes, that's correct.
page actually puts out inaccurate information, there is one strike. And then within 90 days, if you do it twice, then you are given a repeat offender status. And if you continue to do that, then your account gets suspended. But there are multiple reports where these strikes have actually been removed against pages if they are linked or are directly big advertisers for Facebook itself. So they make the rules and then they break the rules. And I don't know if we can actually hold them accountable for that, or if we should even ask. Yes, Venkat.
I have a quick point. I think the political leaders on this debate, and as in the case with most debates, first and foremost, they need to sort of start understanding how Facebook works. I think there's a complete lack of awareness of how Facebook works as a company, as a business model. I think everything is not about Cambridge Analytica and Manish Khanduri and all these other characters who are in these companies. I mean, you need to understand how it works, what the policies are, how they are enforced. I mean, these are things that actually require effort. And I would urge a bipartisan sort of an approach to this. And it is something that I have been actually, hoping to see. From the politicians. But it's it's something not. It's something that's absolutely absent right now. I mean, they should be in a position to study the platform and go beyond their Facebook pages or networks that they operate in.
Okay, Venkat, point well made. Thanks, Venkat and Srinivas Korali, for your contributions to this conversation. Quick response from Mr. Sudesh Verma on what our experts are saying. Mr. Sudesh Verma, as a parliament, we need to have a certain set of regulations and laws, decide to what extent do we want to scrutinize social media platforms and not. So why shouldn't we do that?
You see, asking the Facebook to do something as if Facebook has become supranational government, that is not the correct approach. There is an inter-parliamentary committee, That committee is committee on IT, that is looking into all these aspects, because we do understand the sensitivity in a country like India, where an explosive post can create havoc, and that needs to be taken care of. But what is hate, what is not a hate? And whether the Facebook is manipulated by the BJP ecosystem or the Congress ecosystem, such allegations should not fly with such irresponsibility. That is our whole objection to the whole controversy that has been raked up by the Congress. You see, one newspaper report and you start parroting a line because that suits your political interest. You want to tell your cadres that no, we did not lose because of the people going against us in favor of the BJP, but we lost because the BJP manipulated in cohort with the Facebook the data to influence people's mind. This is the narrative the Congress is trying to build, and there we have the objection. Nobody can support hate speech, as I told you, but there is enough mechanism, as rightly explained by experts. There is a police mechanism, election commission is there during the time of elections, then there is a court which can, of course, supervise that Facebook will have to offload such comments in the Supreme Court or any court of India says that. They are not beyond that because since they are operating in this country, we have to devise mechanisms. There is no doubt about it, but it needs dispassionate analysis.
But nothing has happened, Mr. Sudesh Verma. Mr. Sudesh Verma, Ravi Shankar Prasad 1.5 years ago said, I'm going to summon Mark Zuckerberg, and Jack Dorsey and everybody, and I will get to the bottom of this and make them accountable. We've not moved an inch since then, Mr. Verma.
Because, Tanvi, that statement came, you must appreciate, because there was data theft from Facebook. Was Facebook in alliance with Cambridge Analytica, or Cambridge Analytica has stolen the data to manipulate it to suit Congress political interests? That was
but what happened even in that case?
It was not hate speech. Yes, it is a complicated process, because our government it doesn't have control over Facebook. That the parliamentary committee has to resolve the issue. How to monitor it in a better way, so that people's psychology is not impacted. But at the same time, the freedom that people of this country enjoy on the social media should not be curtailed to their disadvantage.
Okay, Naval Kishore, do you want to come in here? Mr. Naval Kishore, who again it comes down to the same point. How do we solve this problem? Radhika, I'm coming to you next. How do we solve this problem, Mr. Naval Kishore? It's not about one party or the other. Facebook has its own set of rules. They decide when to follow it, when not to follow it. Should we bother? Should we not bother?
No, there is we have to bother, and since the parliament is the highest body, I think Parliament should look at it because it formulates policies, and there is no reason why Sudesh Verma should oppose JPC. JPC is a more kind of accommodative.
You must understand what JPC is and what inter-parliamentary committee is.
Why are you opposing? See, you have said that it is a problem. You also recognize this is a problem, and you also recognize that Parliament can control this kind of thing, can come in. So why are you opposing that? You should come forward and say that, okay, let's look at the problem. Whether it is Facebook which is responsible, whether it is government who is not interested, everything will come in face. I don't see, and I don't have to see BJP, because BJP don't control hate speech. It promotes. There have been several instances. So that is another thing. That is your party business to do, and you have been doing that. So, but so far as a social media platform is concerned, and you as a government, BJP or NP as a government, they must have an objective policy to control or to look at it, that how it can be controlled in public interest. If large number of people are using, and that we recognize that Indians are more using Facebook, we have to create a kind of mechanism where it should not mislead, manipulate opinion to benefit any government, whether your government or any other government. It should not benefit that government, and that benefit should not come through a false means. And that is where it is our concern, that Facebook, since it is
more
used
transparency.
by...
Okay.
Can I give a response to him? because he has attacked.
Shouldn't be
my
used
party.
by RJD or Congress or the BJP. Yes, Mr. Yes. No, Mr. Verma, 1 minute. Let me just bring in Radhika Khera and then you can together respond to both of the parties. Yes, Radhika.
See, they have to set accountability. I don't know what the BJP is afraid of. The Congress is not afraid of anything. If there is something that is related to us, that is why we are saying again and again, there should be a JPC. What is there to hide? If you ask for a JPC, they go ahead and say that India is not a banana republic. And you have to also remember that in September 2008, Mr. Amit Shahji, he went on to address social media workers in a program in Rajasthan, and he said, and he very proudly said this, that we are capable of delivering any message we want to the public, whether sweet or sour, true or fake. This is a living example of what the BJP does. So that is why they are not open to taking any action against the people who say anything, who put up things on Facebook. And we've seen time and again how hatred actually spreads through Facebook, WhatsApp, and in very little time. And in the type of climate that we are living in, you have to control these things. Why is the government shying away from a JPC? What is the commercial deal that the Facebook people were talking about? What is the harm in an inquiry? If you ask for an inquiry, you're a banana republic. If you ask about if an RTI is put about the PM Care Fund, the PMO refuses to reply. Why are you hiding things from the public? What do you have to hide? What is the murky thing that you are up to? What was the tweet?
Okay. Okay. Sudesh Sharma is ready to answer.
If you have the patience to listen,
Sudesh Sharma is ready to answer. Yes.
Yeah. You see, first to Naval Kishore, please don't say that we spread hate. We don't. People of this country love us, and that is why they have voted for us. With such a large majority does not come because of hate. It comes for love for a person called Mr. Narendra Modi, whom you hate. So you peddle lies based on your political affiliation. Had you been a neutral person, I would not have said that. I would have given a different logic. Again, you don't want to listen. You don't want to listen to what I have to say. Then you say that I don't want to listen. You have said something and you go away. You don't want to counter. So now coming to Radhika Khera. You see, there are numerous stories, Tanvi, that have appeared about various scams perpetrated by the Congress when they were in power. Should there be a JPC for that? Tell me that. You asked for a JPC on Rafale, that did not happen. And Rafale, one story was proved to be a lie. The Supreme Court went through the entire process, did not find anything, and you were peddling lies throughout to suit your political narrative during 2019 elections. So you see, the demand for JPC was, hogwash. Here, one report has come in a newspaper that is not very credible. They are just peddling lies against India because the BJP is in power here. The leftist Islamists, they are setting the agenda. The Congress is following that. And they are trying to undermine our democratic institutions. You do not get JPC just because a report has come. Come with some facts, come with a more serious issue that engages the nation. And definitely, that JPC is the prerogative of Parliament. You cannot get it. Sudesh Verma says that, okay, we agree with the JPC. We cannot do that. The Parliament has to agree. The government has to agree. There's a huge lot of process going for that. And it has to be seen how many JPCs have been appointed till now.
Okay.
It's not such a non-serious business.
Okay, no, I'm sorry, I'm completely out of time here, so I'm going to thank all of my panelists for joining us right now. Viewers, I think it's safe to say that we're not going to see a JPC probe on this, even though the Congress party and the RJD and everybody else wants it in the opposition. Fact of the matter is, we don't even know which way we want to go when it comes to demanding accountability from social media giants. Worldwide, it's a big problem. Some of the countries in Europe may have managed to somewhere make some headway with the social media giants, but otherwise it is a big problem. In US, repeated controversies emerge. At the end of the day, these are private entities. We can't be forcing them to censor one speech or the other. Who judges? Who's going to set the benchmark? Who's going to make them accountable? What we can do on our part is to inform you that this does happen. That companies and social media giants lobby for their own business interests, whether it's about policies related to the business that they're into, to the internet, to the bandwidth, to the mobile phones, all of that. They will lobby. They will work in the interest of their advertisers. They will work in the interest of whichever political party has a great amount of influence we shouldn't be surprised if it happens. We don't know if it happened in India. We don't know necessarily what happened with the US elections. But the fact of the matter is, you and I need to be aware that such things can happen. And when we consume our content on social media, we should keep that in mind. Not everything that seemingly trends could be the biggest talking point that everybody is talking about genuinely, should be the biggest headline in the country. Not every big post that pops up on your feed could be true. They may claim they have these fact-checking facilities and these fact-checking criteria in place, but often they fail. So when you get something on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on WhatsApp, just take it as content. May not necessarily be true. True news only comes from established, credible news brands. Everything else could simply be a narrative, a propaganda, false, fake, we don't know. That's how you can be aware about it while we still try and figure how to make social media giants more accountable and how to distance themselves and them from political parties and their influence. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, the crucial verdict in this Sushant Singh death probe by the Supreme Court is set to be announced tomorrow. Remember, Rhea Chakrabarti went to the Supreme Court saying Patna police should not be allowed to investigate this case. Please transfer it to Mumbai. Now, of course, there are multiple parties involved, from Maharashtra government to Bihar government and even the CBI that is already investigating this case. Now, let's go across to Meenakshi Bhanja, who's joining us with more. Meenakshi, so tomorrow Supreme Court decides who investigates the case, but take us through the last set of statements and written affidavits that were filed by all the sides.
Well, Tanvi, beg your pardon. This is hugely interesting given the fact that this is a transfer petition. But already in a transfer petition, we are seeing the sides of the Bihar state, the Maharashtra state, and also the CBI. Very interestingly, the Bihar's intervention in this matter has been protested against by Rhea Chakrabarti. That is the reason she filed this transfer petition in the top court to begin with. Be that as it may, Maharashtra is very staunchly opposed to CBI probe as well in this case, saying that how could Bihar recommend a CBI probe, because this was a probe which did not belong to Bihar to begin with. So how could they go ahead and transfer this probe of something which did not belong to them to begin with? But be that as it may, what happened, Tanvi, was while the matter was being still argued, we saw CBI take charge of the case and even register a FIR. That bit was also highlighted in the Supreme Court by Maharashtra, saying that the CBI showed such haste in this matter that it did not even await for the outcome of the Supreme Court to be known before it registered a FIR on this one. But be that as it may, the most important aspect here has been Rhea's position while the matter was being argued. She has protested staunchly Bihar's intervention, even saying that this is something which is a direct result of political intervention because of the impending assembly polls in Bihar. And very importantly, she has said that she will not be opposed to a CBI probe if the Supreme Court transfers the matter to CBI, provided the jurisdiction of the CBI court is a trial court somewhere in Maharashtra, in Mumbai, but not in Patna. Sushant Singh Rajput's family, as we have seen play out in the public domain, of course, saying that this is a case in which they have lost all faith in Mumbai police because the direction of the probe has headed somewhere else altogether. So a lot of claims and counterclaims being made in the Supreme Court, and it will be interesting to see how the Supreme Court decides, given the fact that both the CBI is eager to investigate this case, and Rhea also now is open, or rather okay, to a CBI probe, provided the jurisdiction of the court of the CBI probe is in Maharashtra and not in Patna. Tanvi.
Okay. And you are right that, even Rhea's lawyers have indicated that they don't really have a problem with this CBI investigation. So let's wait and watch what happens in the Supreme Court tomorrow. Meenakshi Bhanja will be tracking that for us. Thanks so much for joining us right now. Meanwhile, let's also tell you about the investigation being carried out by the Enforcement Directorate. And the Enforcement Directorate that is investigating money laundering allegedly done by Rhea and those who are close to her are now accusing the Mumbai police of not properly handing over all the evidence. Mumbai police had claimed claimed that they had handed over the relevant documents, but the ED says, well, they didn't give us the digital evidence report, they didn't give us the forensic report, they just gave us some random statements. That's essentially what the Enforcement Directorate is telling us, and this whole back and forth between the two is also very interesting. The last time Mumbai police said, well, we have taken over statement of over 30-40 people, tell us specifically whose statements you want. Interestingly, ED says you gave us random statements. But let me tell you, what is happening as far as Rhea Chakrabarti is concerned. Now, earlier today, Rhea Chakrabarti's lawyer, on behalf of her, issued a detailed statement, by far perhaps the most detailed statement that's actually being released by Rhea Chakrabarti and her lawyer Satish Manashinde. This one saying that she was actually groped, molested by Sushant's sister while they were all staying together at Sushant's house. In the statement released, Rhea Chakrabarti also talks about how she herself struggling from panic attacks and anxiety issues, which is one of the reasons that she actually moved out of Sushant's home, because being around Sushant when he was in that state of mind was only adding to her own panic attack and anxiety issue problems. Of course, in these details, they have gone into a point-by-point rebuttal saying that Rhea has maintained her silence all this while because she knows at the end of it, she will be proven innocent since she's done nothing wrong. Sushant's family lawyer has responded to this big charge being made by Rhea about Sushant's sister allegedly molesting her. Here is what Vikas Singh, the lawyer for Sushant's father, had to say.
ये देखिए, वही मैं कह रहा हूँ, ये एक परसेप्शन बैटल भी चल रहा है ना। वो परसेप्शन बैटल में सोच रही हैं, क्योंकि सब लोग अब धीरे धीरे समझ गए हैं कि क्या हुआ है सुशांत के साथ। उनको लग रहा है कि इस परसेप्शन बैटल में कुछ हम इस तरह की बात बोले जिससे लोगों का मन जो है वो कहीं ना कहीं उनके तरफ कुछ सहानुभूति आए उनके लिए। और मैं आपको बता दूं, मैंने तो अपनी जिंदगी में नहीं सुना आज तक कि इस तरह का कोई एलिगेशन हुई। तो इस तरह वियर्ड एलिगेशन बिल्कुल है कि इस तरह के वियर्ड एलिगेशन को बनाया उन्होंने सिर्फ इसीलिए क्योंकि उनको मालूम था कि सुशांत बहुत ज्यादा डिपेंड करते थे प्रियंका के। प्रियंका उनके अकाउंट्स भी देखती थी। प्रियंका जब भी कोई प्रॉब्लम सुशांत को होता था तो प्रियंका को बुलाते थे और प्रियंका सारा कुछ करती थी। और प्रियंका का काफी हस्तक्षेप था घर में। उनके सामने उन्होंने देखा कि सर्वेंट्स को वही ऑर्डर करती थी, कैसे वो अकाउंटेंट्स को बोलती थी। तो इसलिए उन्होंने कहा कि जब तक प्रियंका को जिंदगी से नहीं निकालेंगे तब तक, और प्रियंका को ऐसे निकालना उनके लिए मुश्किल था, कोई ऐसा भद्दा ही एलिगेशन लगाने से वो सक्सेसफुल हो सकती थी, और वही उन्होंने किया। लेकिन सुशांत ने अपने जीते जी अपनी गलती समझी।
Well, Santya, in fact, is joining me with more details of what it is that Rhea Chakrabarti had to say. This detailed statement by her lawyer. Santya, take us through the details.
See, Tanvi, if we talk about the highlights of that statement, so one thing which Rhea in her statement via her legal team has claimed that she has never ever Aditya Thackeray. In fact, she has never spoken to him telephonically also. Now, the reason this claim was made in the statement was actually an effort to dismiss the claims and other theories which are making rounds on several platforms, linking Aditya Thackeray with Sushant's death. So that's a conscious effort which was made to dismiss all those theories. That's one thing. Another was, as you were mentioning right now, that how she, according to her, she was groped by Sushant's sister Priyanka. Now, Tanvi, actually, this is not for the first time that Rhea has mentioned this incident. Before this, in her statement to Mumbai police on 18th of June, Rhea Chakrabarti in detail mentioned this statement, this particular incident, and she accused Priyanka of molesting her. Now, Mumbai police said that because Sushant's family was not cooperating, not providing detailed statement, that's why Mumbai police couldn't really corroborate that particular claim made by Rhea. But this is not something which Rhea is saying for the first time. Another thing, Tanvi, which is important in the statement, she has mentioned, the statement actually says that Sushant was planning on leaving Mumbai and he was actually contacting his family members to try and meet him before he leaves. In fact, in the statement, it has written that how it took efforts on Sushant's part and actually crying. Only after that, Neetu Singh, his sister, agreed to come and stay with him. That's one thing. And the reason that part is put up in the statement, Tanvi, because all this while Sushant's family is making an allegation that how Rhea actually dragged him away from his family. But now via these lines, Rhea is actually trying to convey that Sushant's relationships with his family were never good in the first place to begin with. And it was not Sushant who was pushing them away. Family also never really cared much about him. That's the reason that particular part has been put there. Now, after that, the statement also says that Rhea herself
Okay,
was
well,
actually
allegations and counter allegations. Yeah, allegations and counter allegations from both ends. Let's wait and watch how it pans out. At the end of the day, a fair investigation will only tell us the truth. Thank you so much, Santya, for joining us with the details of what Rhea Chakrabarti and her side have to say in that detailed statement that's been released. Let's also play out the comment from Maheshwar Hazari, Bihar minister, who alleges that so far the investigation has been politically motivated.
पहले ये महाराष्ट्र पुलिस बनाम बिहार पुलिस शुरू हो गई और अब लग रहा है कि बिहार के राजनेता वर्सेस महाराष्ट्र के राजनेता के बीच में एक टकराव का दौर शुरू हो गया। जिस तरीके से वहां से बयानबाजी आ रही हैं, चुनाव से जोड़ा जा रहा है, कहा जा रहा है कि कहीं ना कहीं मुख्यमंत्री इसमें इंटरेस्ट ले रहे हैं। संजय राउत और तमाम वहाँ के एनसीपी के नेताओं ने जिस तरीके से बयान दिए हैं, कहीं ना कहीं सुशांत का परिवार भी उससे आहत हुआ है।
नहीं, देखिए, सुशांत जी के परिवार ही नहीं आहत हुआ है, करोड़ों लोग आहत है, पूरे बिहार के एक एक नागरिक आहत है, विदेश में भी इनके चाहने वाले लोग थे वो भी आहत है। सिर्फ न्याय चाहते हैं। बिहार सरकार कोई राजनीति नहीं कर रही है, न भारत सरकार कोई राजनीति कर रही है। हम लोगों का एक ही है कि हम लोग को न्याय मिलना चाहिए। जो भी अभियुक्त है उनको जल्द से जल्द अरेस्ट किया जाए, उनकी कड़ी से कड़ी सजा देनी चाहिए, जिससे कि भारत के लोग निश्चित होकर के जाए मुंबई में अपना कला का प्रदर्शन करें, अपना प्रतिभा को निखारने का काम करें। यही हम लोगों की मांग है कि न्याय मिलना चाहिए। हम लोग कोई राजनीति नहीं कर रहे हैं। हम लोग महाराष्ट्र सरकार से अभी भी आग्रह करते हैं और महाराष्ट्र सरकार का जिस तरह के बर्ताव हो रही है, तो मैं तो समझता हूं कि अभियुक्त के पकड़ने के बजाय जिस तरह से लंबा खींचा जा रहा है, तो सब कोई समझ सकता है कि क्या हालात है।
Well, let's move on and get you the latest across 6 states that are currently being hit by heavy rainfall and a flood-like situation. 6 states, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Assam, Bihar and Gujarat continue to face the monsoon fury. In fact, the IMD has said widespread rainfall is expected even in Rajasthan and Gujarat, along with Uttarakhand and Maharashtra, both today as well as tomorrow. Northeastern states are also expected to receive isolated rainfall in the next 4 to 5 days. So a large part of our country currently facing the monsoon fury. Let's begin with what's happening in Andhra Pradesh. Villages in West and East Godavari districts of Andhra Pradesh continue to be inundated due to floods. Visuals on your screens show the Gandhi Pochama temple completely submerged by flood water in the East Godavari district. State officials say that the flooding in the river is expected to reduce now. By tonight, hopefully things will improve, with water level expected to drop to 17 lakh cusecs after touching a peak of 22.9 lakh cusecs this morning. 30,000 people in East Godavari and about 27,000 people in West Godavari have been badly affected and are still in a tough position. Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy conducted an aerial survey of the flood-affected areas this evening. Jagan Mohan Reddy also directed state officials to provide financial assistance of 2,000 rupees to each of the families who've been impacted. Meanwhile, moving on to the neighboring state of Telangana, incessant rain slashed several parts of Telangana as well, with the water level in Godavari rising to the third warning level. Warangal was actually the worst affected district. Telangana Minister K.T. Rama Rao conducted an aerial survey to review the flood situation in the district. Visuals on your screens are actually also of the minister speaking to the villagers after a road had caved in. Warangal was one of the worst affected areas in Telangana today. And also a little further up in Madhya Pradesh, water levels in the Narmada River are now flowing above the danger mark and continuing to rise. Floodgates at the Bagri Dam in Jabalpur have been opened due to incessant rainfall in the catchment area. Jabalpur district administration officials have alerted people living in the river's downstream areas and have also evacuated people from the most vulnerable areas. Central Water Commission has issued a flash flood warning to the districts in East Madhya Pradesh. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of the Urban Debate. Thank you so much for joining us.